50 ways to live your time. Number 10. Things need to be viewed as points. By Kosen Handa. Here's an apple. Usually, we see the apple as a three-dimensional sphere in our object perception. However, the spatial perception of nosology is different. We consider things as points, effectively reducing them to 0 dimensions because we believe that three-dimensional space is only valid when space surrounds the thing. In other words, if a thing occupies the entire space, there is no three-dimensional space. We make such a distinction between the inside and outside of things because, as I mentioned previously, we believe that these spaces have entirely different characteristics from each other. To provide further clarity, we need to establish this concept explicitly. Let me introduce a passage from the series file that influenced my thinking on this matter. What is a thing?
A thing in human consciousness is inside a thing.
Do you mean that things have inner and outer aspects?
Yes, they do. The inner and outer aspects of things are the same as the inside and outside of things.
What is the difference between the inside of a thing and the outside of a thing?
In human consciousness, the inside of thing is the invisible world, and the outside of thing is the visible world.
When you always say that human consciousness is falling into the invisible world, you mean that humans are falling into the inside of things. Is that correct?
Correct. The direction of spiritual evolution that the light brings to the outside of things is not yet visible to human consciousness.
What does Okotsuto mean when he says that humans are falling into the inside of things? As we have discussed, our visual perception of an object relies on the contrast between the object and its background space, i.e., the space outside the object. That is because the contrast defines the contour of the object. Without comparing figure and ground, we cannot perceive an object as an object. Thus, we must consider that the space that occupies the inside of an object and the space that constitutes the outside of an object are absolutely different. However, we often conceptualize space in terms of scale. For example, we might regard an apple with a diameter of 10 centimeters and the spherical area around the apple, which is viewed as 30 centimeters in diameter, as the same space. Essentially, this is what I'm trying to convey. Firstly, we often perceive the world as a vast container labeled space, filled with numerous things. This cognitive framework, which diminishes things to mere objects, is the illusion that the human gestalt imposes on us. To wake up from this illusion, you should employ the concept of paratron, i.e., dimensional observing particle or dimensional observer, used in nosology. Paratron aims to meticulously shape the latent dimensional variations concealed within the space notified by human gestalt. Consequently, formulating this concept transforms into a cognitive exercise within the framework of nosology. As I explained in the chapter titled Transformer Gestalt Basic Program in 2013, The Day God Sees God's Advanced Edition, within the system of paratrons, the internal space of an object corresponds to the region from psi1 to psi2, while its external space corresponds to a region from psi3 to psi4, a completely different region. Notably, an object's external space is one dimension higher than its internal space. This dimensional difference can determine the presence or absence of an observer. In essence, a space without an observer is one level lower than the space with an observer. Let us now look at the dimensions created by dimensional paratrons psi1, psi2, and psi3, psi4, respectively. In the region known as 10Q, point sphere, we encounter the three-dimensionality of an object's interiority. The direction of expansion from the object is denoted as psi1, and the direction of contraction from the object is psi2. Notably, there is no concept of the externality of objects within this dimension. Consequently, what we commonly refer to as three-dimensional space, characterized solely by objects, is considered a point or zero-dimensionality in nosology. Furthermore, the absence of contours for objects in this dimension implies the non-existence of an observer. The cognition that space is three-dimensional implies that the observer is simultaneously located at arbitrary positions in three dimensions. In the figure, the spherical space defined by the blue arrow, along with the observer's rotation around the object, indicates psi3. Conversely, the spherical space defined by the red arrow, along with the observer's rotation around the object, corresponds to psi4. As you can see, the orientation of psi3 and psi4 are opposite in three-dimensional space. This is the meaning of mutual invertibility of three-dimensional space within the framework of nosology. Let me briefly explain the difference in the meaning of three-dimensionality in these figures. As we discussed in the last video, the three-dimensionality of objects can all be contained within a single line segment, the observer's line of gaze, by rotating the objects themselves. However, it is essential to note that the background space remains stationary while the object rotates. That is because the observer's visual field corresponds directly to the background space, not to the space occupied by the object. In other words, the space the observer's sense of sight is touching is directly engaged with the background space, not the object's space. To better understand this, go around an object with the object at the center. You will observe the background space rotating along with it as you move around it. This rotating space is what we commonly refer to as three-dimensional space. Therefore, in the precise sense, the three-dimensionality of space refers to the three-dimensionality that extends from the object to its surroundings. It means that our observation of objects is possible only within the three-dimensionality of space. It is crucial to recognize that the observer is not included in the space of solely the three-dimensionality of objects. The bulkiness of the interior of an object alone does not constitute a three-dimensional space. Three dimensions that solely represent an object as a solid form, and three dimensions that extend beyond the object, creating a space around it. Comprehending this distinction is crucial for building a foundation upon which we can explore the concept of dimensional paratherence.